Parliament on the examination of the reports of the Auditor General and internal controls of the NLCB for the years 2008 to 2012, and to examine the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the NLCB for financial year 2013, to assess whether the NLCB's expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it, to determine the challenges being faced by the NLCB and the possible solutions to these challenges, to make further recommendations to assist the NLCB in achieving the efficient execution of its mandate while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. Based on the issues identified, the following representatives were invited to today's public hearing: the Ministry of Finance, the National Lotteries Control Board, and the Auditor General's Department. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners are invited to send their comments and questions related to today's inquiry via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, X @ttparliament. I would now ask members of my committee to introduce themselves, beginning with my colleague on my right.
Okay, Jolene John, good morning. Vice Chairman of the committee. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, all. Welcome. Hazel Thompson Ahi, member.
Thank you very much, members. May I also now ask members who have been invited to today's session to introduce yourselves, beginning with the Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee, and members of the viewing audience. My name is Michelle Durham-Kisoon, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, everyone. I am Chintamani Suku, Acting Director, Economic Research and Policy Coordination.
Hi, good morning, all. My name is Taigo Kali Naipol, Acting Senior Business Analyst, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you very much. May I ask the representatives from the National Lotteries Control Board to introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Chairman Eustace Nances of the NLCB.
Good morning, everyone. Wendy Dwarika, Finance Lead Consultant.
Good morning, everyone. Lysandra Thompson-Can, Acting Secretary to the Board.
Good morning, everyone. I am Chandrakali Miraj, Corporate Secretary, NLCB.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janelle John Bates. I am the Legal Manager of the National Lotteries Control Board.
Good morning, everyone. I am Margaret Joseph, the Human Resources Manager at NLCB.
Good morning, everyone. I am Fidel Ordin, Operations Manager, Online Games.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Coed Murray, Board Director, NLCB.
Good morning, everyone. Leon Ramdeen, Director, NLCB.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members of the Auditor General's Department to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, all. Gary Peters, Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning, everyone. Cheryl Ann Wright, Audit Director.
So thank you all very much again, and welcome to the Public Accounts Committee, to today's session, the 23rd meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. May I now invite the Auditor General's Department to make a brief opening statement?
Okay, good morning again, Chairman, members, representatives from Ministry of Finance, NLCB, and members of the viewing public. Our relationship with the NLCB is defined by the National Lotteries Act. Section 24 states that the National Lotteries account and the accounts of the board shall be public accounts within the meaning of Section 116 of the Constitution. Section 25 sub 2 goes on to state the accounts of the board shall be audited by the Auditor General. Thank you.
May I now invite the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance to make a brief opening statement?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the viewing audience. Thank you for this invitation. We are pleased to be here to provide any clarification that the committee may request of us on the accounts of the National Lotteries Control Board. And we hope that we can progress any matters that are sticking points in these years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the chairman of the NLCB to make a brief opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. I would ask my finance lead to make an open statement on behalf of NLCB.
Good morning, everyone. Again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Committee, thank you for your invitation. I have been tasked this morning with presenting the opening statement of the National Lotteries Control Board on behalf of the board and management of the NLCB. In addition to our audited accounts for 2013 and the questions from the committee to which the NLCB has submitted written responses, the committee has raised topics for discussion which I wish to address in this opening statement. 1. Submission of outstanding financial statements to the Auditor General's Department. The Auditor General's Department completed the audit of NLCB's 2013 financial statements in 2024, and the NLCB received a clean audit report after receiving qualified opinions for the prior 3 years. The NLCB has submitted to the Auditor General its financial statements for 2023, so that department now has in hand financial statements for the years 2014 to 2023. The Auditor General's Department informed the NLCB that every effort would be made in 2025 to prioritize the audits for which financial statements were received. In fact, audits for the years 2014 and 2015 started this Monday. 2. The company has progressed and achieved successes in several areas since the committee's examination of the audited financial statements and internal controls for the years 2008 to 2012. Of note are the following. 1. In 2024, the NLCB successfully renegotiated a 7th extension of its contract with IGT for the operation of its online lottery system. The contract was extended for a period of 5 years to 2029. The company is expected to save approximately $449 million during this contract period. Secondly, the NLCB has a network of approximately 1,200 retail lottery agents in Trinidad and Tobago and maintains strong relationships with them to ensure the integrity of the games and its revenues. The NLCB has taken steps to ensure agent compliance with contract terms and the submission of lottery ticket sales proceeds to the NLCB, and by extension, the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Some of the measures include consequences for default of debt, the establishment of a security bond, and a readjustment to the agent's credit limits. Additionally, the NLCB is working towards implementing a cashless payment solution at lottery booths and will embark on a campaign in 2025-2026 to upgrade its network of lottery centers to make them more customer-centric. 3. The NLCB has enhanced its corporate governance by establishing policies for critical areas, such as its accounting policies and procedures, sponsorship policy, credit policy, and delegation of authorities. More recently, in Q4 of 2024, it approved its whistleblowing policy, a conflict of interest policy, its anti-fraud policy, which are being rolled out and fully implemented in 2025. The Audit and Risk Committee of the Board has finalized the company's enterprise risk management policy, which it expects to submit to the Board of Directors for approval at the next board meeting. 4. The NLCB has successfully managed its operating costs within budget, while focusing on delivering returns for good causes through contributions to the Sports and Culture Fund and sponsorship grants to deserving organizations for worthy causes in Trinidad and Tobago under its sponsorship policy, it has sustainably managed the funds allocated for sponsorships. Sponsorship costs decreased by 47% from 2013 to 2024. The NLCB plans to begin construction of its state-of-the-art flagship building on Pembroke Street, Port of Spain, early 2025. The new facility will offer improved working conditions and additional space for staff. It will also feature adequate parking facilities, a draw studio for the transmission of live lottery draws, and commercial space for lease. The revenue generated from the commercial space will offset the mortgage for that construction. Marketing and promoting the NLCB brand is a key focus of the NLCB strategic plan. In 2025 and beyond, the NLCB aims to boost sales by launching new and exciting games as it introduces mobile and internet gaming. In closing, we at the NLCB remain steadfast in our mission to enhance the national lottery experience, while ensuring that we contribute positively to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We now look forward to discussing the management of our accounts with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for quite a comprehensive update as to the status of NLCB and NLCB's accounts. I am particularly heartened to hear that the NLCB's accounts have been submitted to the Auditor General's Department at least up to 2023, because I had actually listed those as questions, what would have been my opening questions. But can you advise, just for completion of that part of the questioning, what is the current status of the financials for the audited financials for NLCBs for fiscal 2024?
Chairman, we expect that that should be completed within a month, so then it would then be submitted to the board for its approval and then to the Auditor General.
Question to the Auditor General, because we are today, what we have before us is quite a few years behind. What is the current status of the auditing of the accounts as submitted? I know Finance Lead has indicated some numbers, but I would like to get from you what is the current status.
Well, right now we started the audit for 2014 this Monday gone with the intention of following up to with 2015. Initially, we're looking to start in groups of 2 because sometimes with the client, space is a problem, and sometimes we need to lean heavily on the client's human resources, particularly with these back-in-time audits. So we try to break it up in small pieces to make it more palatable for both parties. If they are able for us to continue after the first group of 2, we are more than happy to accommodate that. And also, I'm happy to hear that Ms. Dwarka mentioned a new building. We are hoping that an audit room or room for auditors would be included in those plans. So that would make it easier, because what happens, Chairman, they have to move around staff to make room for us. So that creates a little bit of animosity when they think we stay there too long. So once we have our own room assigned to us, that would make things a lot easier. But we have all intentions to try to get NLCB up to date as far as we could with the staff we have. Well,
you're welcome for the opportunity to make a plug for some space at the NLCB's headquarters. I want to treat strictly now with some of the things that you would have mentioned in your opening statements, ma'am. You spoke about the sponsorship policy, but in the submissions that I have in front of me from the NLCB, there was some concerns about the sponsorship policy, whether in fact it was in fact bear with me for 1 second, page 15 to 16. Page 15 to 16 of your submissions to us. In your previous appearance at the Public Accounts Committee, you had indicated a desire to provide in our report, in fact, we had indicated a desire for you to provide a quantitative and qualitative analysis result for the performance of the sponsorship policy. In the response that we got, which is attached to a covering letter 20th January 2025, which is a couple of months ago, the response says, a quantitative and qualitative analysis for the performance of the sponsorship policy has not been done. Is that correct? Is that still valid, that the analysis of the performance of the sponsorship policy has not been done?
Yes, so at the time when the previous meeting, the sponsorship policy has now been updated. It is more stringent. We have put a lot more controls into place, and we are currently working on the portal. The portal is actually complete, and once that, it has to go to the board at the month end, and then for approval to launch. And once it's launched, we will actually be able to have the proper data and everything in place to do a full assessment of everything.
So this forms two parts. There was an analysis done, and on the basis of the analysis, amendments would have been made to ensure that shortcomings were superseded. Is that correct to say?
Yes, that is correct, to make sure that everything is done properly and that we have everything controls, it reports everything in for the policy.
Ma'am, so two questions immediately arise. Just for the listening audience to be aware, I know that Ms. Baraka would have indicated a value earlier. I think you would have indicated that there would have been an increase by 47% of the sponsorship. What I'm trying to get, sorry? A reduction of 47%. Great. So for the listening audience, can you just give us two things that I would like to get specifically with regards to the sponsorship? The current level of sponsorship post the sponsorship policy and the previous during the sponsorship policy. So if you could give me something for probably 2020 and what currently exists. I think I just want the listening audience to get an idea of the value of the sponsorship that is involved.
Okay, so in 2020, our sponsorship was 23 million, 23.0 million. And in 2024, we have 17.7 million.
Thank you very much. So that brings me to the second question. And the second question is that when you did your assessment, you did the qualitative and quantitative analysis of the sponsorship policy, what were some of the flaws that you would have found that would have facilitated, what were some of the flaws that you would have found that would have been facilitated by the sponsorship policy as existed then, which you would have corrected in the current policy?
So the current policy actually requires persons to submit documents when they're submitting, such as the certificate of incorporation for their business, proof of their business bank account, because we do not pay to individuals, their most recent annual returns, the listing of directors and beneficial owners, so that we are assured that the persons or the entities who are receiving sponsorship are all legitimate, that the needs are being met. In addition to that, we have implemented the fact that by a certain threshold, they have to submit after action reports to us to ensure that how the funds were utilized, so that we can have a check on that and ensure that persons are using the funds to what they requested. So there were just some changes just to make sure to just tighten up everything and make it a little more stringent from how it was before.
So I understand that. That is what exists now. That's the corrected version. I'm trying to get an idea because we were talking about 23 million in 2020, but it was been about the same kinds of figures, maybe 17 to 20 from the numbers that I was seeing, maybe 17 to 20 over an extended period. The question I'm trying to hone into, the issue I'm trying to hone into is that we have corrected the mistakes, but I'm trying to get an idea of what the mistakes were. Is that clear?
Chairman, I think there's more due diligence, so there wasn't that amount of due diligence previously. We are providing sponsorship to registered businesses, and before it would have been to individuals as well. And also before we didn't have an after-event report. Now we do. And this after-event report is expected to identify that, well, to ensure that the funds were properly spent in accordance with what they would have requested.
Okay,
so those are three areas that were improved in the policy.
Okay. So my question then, again, following from what you've said, is that you would have identified those weaknesses, which is a lack of a follow-up, lack of a post-event report. So how long has the NLCB been in operation?
More than 50 years.
And what we are, so I want to be very clear what the concern is, because I'm not sure that there will be a question to follow with the concern, because you would have provided an answer already. But my concern is that for more than 50 years, we would have had a situation where we would have been spending between $15 and $20 million per year of taxpayers' money. These are persons who would have invested or would have bet, but this is still taxpayers' money. We've been spending between $15 and $20 million per year without the benefit of some of these very simple checks and balances. And I'm sure that the Auditor General, in reports I would have seen previously, would have made recommendations for checks and balances to ensure proper accountability. Now, I'm aware, based on what you're saying today, that we now have some of those checks and balances in place. But has anybody been held accountable for the fact that we would have been spending all of this money, between $15 and $20 million per year, without as basic as a postmortem, for lack of a better word? Monies would have been given to agencies, and the agencies would have been spending it without the checks and balances being put in place, even for vetting whether the agencies are credible in operation, etc., and whether the money for which you have provided was actually used for the intent for which it was given. Has there been any, so this will be the question after all of that, has there been any attempt by the NLCB to look today, when you have a sponsorship policy which will treat with it, has there been any attempt by the NLCB to treat with what those shortcomings may have been before, in terms of holding persons to account, in terms of verifying accounts that would have been raised with you as not necessarily money had been spent for where it was supposed to go, because that is how you knew that there was a deficit there. You knew that there was a shortfall because you would have identified some instances where persons seeking sponsorship may not have been genuine, but they may have gotten documentation, they may have gotten funding, etc. Has there been any attempt by the NLCB to go backwards from the information provided to you to hold to account beneficiaries or agencies which would have, or individuals which would have not done proper due diligence in the award of that money prior to where we are today?
Chairman, not to my knowledge that we have gone back to analyze, as you indicated. I'm sure what I've just indicated in terms of strengthening the policy, some of it was in place, except that it wasn't properly documented. So now that it's properly documented and there's a policy in place, we expect that the staff and the relevant departments would follow it and comply with the policy.
I understand that. I'm very clear that what you're saying to the committee today is that you have put in place a structure which you believe is much more robust today than it was previously. I am just over-expressing my concern that monies would have been expended without that level of due diligence, and that there was no attempt by NLCB to review, not just to review the legislation and the policy, but to review those operations and to seek somehow to try to recover where money would have been used inappropriately or where money would have been provided to entities which did not use it for the purpose. It is a bit of a concern that we may be facilitating individuals who deliberately have now managed to get away scot-free, even though they would have benefited from sponsorship by the NLCB.
Chair, may I interject?
Yes, thank you.
Very good question by you. When this board came in, sponsorship was like a free-for-all. So we set out to start to tighten up the belt based on that. In the early years, sponsorship would have been used up its maximum within the financial year or 3 months within the financial year. So automatically, sponsorship used to use up the allocation only within 3 months. When we came in, we took decision to be a little more robust, a little more tight. We cut down the amount of sponsorship that was just freely given away, and we start to manage it in the best possible way. But to your point, nobody was held responsible because the management and staff on the board before, that was their responsibility. So from 2020, we start to receive big savings by cutting down almost by 20–30% of the sponsorship that used to go to the general public.
Let me ask the question a little bit differently. So I appreciate your answer, sir. Let me ask the question a little bit differently. Have you now, having done all of this assessment from 2020 to now and cut down the sponsorship based on the fact that you would have now identified what their weaknesses are and who the weaknesses were, have you, at this point, established a blacklist? Might be the wrong word, but if you understand what I'm going for, have you established a list of entities that would have benefited previously that do not meet your current requirements?
Go ahead.
Yes, we have. And even with this current policy, if persons do not submit their after-action reports, etc., to show us what they would have used the funds for, they are not eligible to receive sponsorship.
So we would have had today at the NLCB what is in fact a blacklist of persons who may have benefited before but did not meet the threshold that you are now setting. Has anything been done with that blacklist? Or is it just that going forward, have we now just set a time frame? Okay, so what has happened in the past, whatever mistakes or whatever errors or whatever breaches that may have occurred for the last, how many ever years? The last, well, it would be 50 years because those breaches would have existed from then. We've now cut a line in the sand and said, whatever has happened before, we forgive it and we are now moving forward. Is that what has happened?
Basically, yes.
Do you not see it useful to pursue those, especially if you find that there were entities that received funding that did not use the money for what it was assigned to? So we're looking at the fact that, okay, there was a space, a deficiency in the NLCB because you did not do the background to ensure that this was a valid entity, useful, proper, submitted. Okay, so we did not do that at that point in time. They received the funds. But having established that they received the funds and it was not used for the purposes for which it was used, don't you think it is useful to find some avenue to persecute and, if possible, prosecute those individuals or those entities? Not just to say blacklist, well, from today we are not going to treat you, but you now need to account because you would have given funding or support to these entities on the basis of representations that they would have made for specific use of the funds and specific applications. But it is, in fact, our money, it's taxpayers' money, money from citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, that may have been used inappropriately, don't you think it is useful as an entity, while we move forward, to also ensure that those perpetrators, those individuals who deliberately encouraged or involved themselves in actions which are unethical, immoral, and illegal, because they would have made representations to the NLCB. Don't you think it is useful to persecute and or prosecute those individuals?
Chair, at this point in time, we did not go and do a total in-depth into that. But I can ask the staff and the management, especially for sponsorship, to go back beyond 2020 and beyond and look at whatever report we can find and send it back to the committee.
I will appreciate that. But before I turn over to my colleagues, I have one more question that I want to ask. Is it possible for you to give an assessment, a general assessment, if it is possible, then please do so, of the kind of value we would have been looking at? Now, you said that sponsorship has decreased by 47% between 2013 and today. Was that decrease on the basis of the hardening of your position, or was that decrease on the basis of the fact that 47% of your sponsorship may have been being provided in questionable circumstances? Understand the question? If you have a 47% fall in your sponsorship, that is today, based on your new sponsorship policy, that means that 47% fall would have been for a reason. Is it that we have less applicants now? Or is it that 47% fall is persons or entities that may have been involved in making requests to the NLCB without really being qualified as you now have? Is that what that 47%? Is that 47% the possible loss based on inappropriate requests for sponsorship, inappropriate use of sponsorship funds?
I may say that we operate more prudent on the list that come before us. Sometimes we would have a list like maybe 100 applicants for the month, and therefore we'd operate more diligent, more prudent, and be very selective. And that is how the sponsorship of the 47% started to reduce. It was not like everybody who applied for sponsorship would be given the sponsorship that is required. And therefore, from that time, we start to be a little more prudent. We put systems in place, we put management in place, we put accountability in place, and that is the results of where we are here today.
Right,
the reduction of the 47 million.
Thank you. I don't want to spend much more time on that. I have just one more question. Has the sponsorship policy been approved, and is it in place today?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to turn over to my colleagues now who will ask some questions, and then I will follow up thereafter as we go along.
Tell me, whoever is the best person to respond, what was the purpose of formulating and, I suppose, going through the process of putting a policy in place, having it approved? What is the process? It went from where to where to where? What is the importance of this policy? Before I say what I have to say, explain to me, what was the process? We all agree that it's very important that you have policies, and I commend you. You have policies dealing with very, very important areas. Conflict of interest, whistleblowing policy, anti-fraud policy. That speaks to good things in the organization. Tell me something about the procedure. How did this come to be, this document that is before us today?
I may say we have to protect NLCB purse and the people of Trinidad and Tobago purse, the government of Trinidad and Tobago purse. And that's what we set out to do. So therefore, we need was to put rigid policy in place, rigid system in place, to avoid people taking advantage of money that is there, or they have feel is advantage of money that is there for their purpose. Remember, these policies and these sponsorship is guided by cultural, sporting, things like that. So we need to have to tighten up that the money goes to the policies and what it is it's all about. All right?
To these policies, who vetted them? The document having been prepared, the document that's before us today, who were the persons responsible for looking at the policies and making sure they were properly written out?
There is a committee.
Mm-hmm.
Every department has a committee at NLCB, which is chaired by a convener, a member of the board, and the management. And we looked at what used to take place in the past, and we did our tighten up from based on that. Mm-hmm. So it goes to the committee, and then the committee then makes the recommendation to the board.
Mm-hmm. And the committee would have ensured that this was properly written out?
Yes.
I see nods.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's look at the conflict of interest policy. Hiring family members or affiliates. Number 2, a reporting person shall not enter into or participate in any proceeding or decision-making which relates to the award of a contract to a family member or affiliate. What's wrong there? Shouldn't it be award? Which relates to the award of a contract? But I am seeing aware of a contract, and that passed through everybody, and nobody saw that. And this is a policy that needs to be followed. Yes? All right. When I look at page 15, so that was page 9, I see, person, I reviewed the above considerations and requested the following action be taken to manage the conflict, right? So it's talking about action to be taken. And when I read, person relinquishes the interest or resign from the from. You're resigning from the position that is causing the conflict. Person temporarily removes themselves. I mean, I have to wonder what is going on. When I look at the whistleblower policy...
Member, may I ask you to cite the documentation, for the name of the documentation for the listening audience?
So we were talking about the conflict of interest, right? The conflict of interest policy. The whistleblowing policy. Purpose, page 6 of 18. Establish a process through which whistleblowers can NLCB a potential violation of this policy, improper conduct, or other related concerns. What is missing there? Can alert the NLCB, can advise the NLCB, can inform. There's no verb there.
Well, can I ask HR to respond to this?
That's why I ask you the procedure, because I cannot understand how people could go through a number of responses, could go through this document, publish this document, put it out there for the public, and there are important words that are missing. There are grammatical errors. I'm going to pass my copy to you, when I finish with it. so that you will be aware of some of the mistakes that I picked up last night. That annoyed me terribly because I'm really allergic to grammar and punctuation and even using the words. How can words be completely left out? This is a responsible organization, and I expected better, because this is a policy you're putting out there for people to follow, and you cannot leave out important words from the document. So I'm sorry that I had to bring this to your attention, but really it should not have happened.
So, can NLCB respond, please? Because what my colleague is basically pointing out is that your conflict of interest policy, and that it raises several related issues. Your conflict of interest policy, which, as you indicated, we're very proud that you have a conflict of interest policy. You indicated in your opening statement that that is one of the policies that have been, in fact, passed through the checks and balances, etc. But what my colleague is indicating, what the member is indicating...
Could I ask the corporate secretary to respond?
Sure.
Corporate.
Hi. I wish to say that the version of the policies that are being mentioned, which were presented to the board, which would have passed through the committees, and the final versions that went to the board, my recollection is that those didn't have those errors that were mentioned. It is possible, from what I'm hearing, that we may have inadvertently attached the wrong version of it to the submission that went to the PSC. And we can, in the subsequent written submission to you, provide the correct copy. But I'm certain we are in the process right now of rolling out these particular policies in the organization. And I know myself, the legal manager who's next to me here, we have looked at those and we are sure that those errors that are observed by Mrs. Hazel Thompson-Ahi are not in the version that we have.
So you have with you now a corrected version, an up-to-date version and that version does not contain the mistakes and errors and omissions that I pointed out.
I don't have it with me at the moment, but I am certain we can provide that to you in subsequent correspondence. But we do have the correct version that wouldn't have those errors that you pointed out. We were very much at pains to go through it with the convener of our Human Resource Committee, who is himself a lawyer. And we were very careful that what came before the board would have been correct with the right language.
I want to thank you for your comment, ma'am. But what this raises is a bigger issue. You are very convinced that you have all the correct documentation, etc., etc. And you went through your relevant procedures and what is before you, what you put before your committee, what you put before your board. You are comfortable that it does not have the errors that my colleague has raised. The issue there is just been made worse, because you are now provided information to the committee, the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, which are in error, which have substantial errors, and those errors are not just grammatical. The context of it, given what the policy is, the entire policy could become null and void on the basis of errors and vagueness, even in some of the issues that were raised there. My concern is now that we have, Mr. Chairman, several documentation provided to the committee, including audited financials, including copies of the codes of conduct, etc., 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 which may not have been the versions that you have in your office. That is an issue of concern. I would have expected, and I'm sure that is what has incensed my colleagues so much, I would have expected that you would have treated the Public Accounts Committee with enough respect and regard, given what our role is. Our role is to assist you. Our role is to identify, as I indicated in the opening statement, to identify what concerns and queries and issues you may be facing and to make recommendations for resolving them. But I'm very concerned that enough emphasis and care was not provided. I'm concerned that enough emphasis and care was not provided by your good selves in the submission of documentation, because I'm very concerned that my colleague will be able to find and spot some more issues in some of the other codes. I'm very concerned that you didn't spend enough time and effort, especially given the amount of time that has lapsed between when we first engaged the NLCB to today. In fact, we were supposed to have a meeting, I believe, in January, somewhere down that way. So several months have passed, and there has been no attempt to make any corrections. It means that we may have at the board's, at this committee's hands, information that may be out of sync with what you have, and therefore we are placed at a disadvantage. And I'm really concerned, and I want to emphasize it. I'm glad my colleague raised it. I'm very concerned about the importance of the Public Accounts Committee and our role, and therefore that the need for NLCB to pay a little bit more emphasis, to pay a little bit more attention in the documentation, especially these kinds of documentation that you're providing to us. I look forward in your submissions to the updated, clean, neatened versions, whatever they are, of all the documentations, and I want to challenge you, of all the documentations that you would have been submitted to the Accounts Committee for today's session. Please review and ensure that we have the updated versions, because it would be, we would be at cross purposes. We would not be able to help you, you would not be able to help us, which would be contrary to what the Public Accounts Committee really is supposed to do. So I thank my colleague for raising the issue. I thank you, ma'am, for suggesting that you may have made an error in the submissions to us, but that is a substantial error, because now I wonder whether or not the Auditor General has updated figures as well, or whether the errors are simply with regards to this. This is not just typographical. It's seriously offensive, I think, to us to have gone through all these documentation only to be told afterwards that this may not be the final versions. So I look forward to your submissions. I really hope that you would provide to the committee, you would review what you've provided to the committee and send us, please, corrected, updated versions.
Chair, I humbly apologize to the chairman, and I will ensure that the version of everything is properly done and sent to the committee. I will take personal interest on I think we have quite a number of legal persons on NLCB, and the corporate secretary is quite experienced. So,
Mr. Chairman, to make it worse, you have a wonderful group of hardworking individuals, I agree with you, but what was sent to us has errors. So I appreciate your comments, but what was sent to us does have errors. I want to move past that. My colleague, do you have further questions? Turn over to Member Julian John.
Thank you, Chairman. The accounts we have before us as of 30th September 2013. That's your latest account, which you have presented to the Auditor General.
No,
they're up to 20. But so what? But this is what was sent to us.
This was what was sent to the Parliament, reading Parliament, and Parliament then sent to us.
Okay, so if you have up to 20, are they settled accounts, or they're still in the process of being audited?
The accounts before you, the 2013 accounts, are audited accounts,
right.
And we've completed the subsequent years, and they've been sent to the Auditor General for auditing.
Okay, so they have not been audited.
They have not been audited.
Very well, they're incomplete. All right, I'm seeing in your 2013 accounts, so this might be dated, acquired this property on Pembroke Street, it came up earlier. Is it that, what I read in your notes is that the board, there is need for government approval to move forward, and that approval as at 2013 had not been forthcoming. Is that now a changed position?
That's correct. In 2013, it was not forthcoming, and it has changed so far. So we've had approval to move forward.
Also, in those accounts, you had some kind of informal arrangement with a third party Is that still in place, the third party?
We had an arrangement with, yes, a third party to lease the property until we were ready to construct a building on it.
So they are now off the property?
They are now off the property.
Notice, okay. Unclaimed prices, what kind of accounting treatment does that have, and how is it reflected in the accounts?
So these are prizes that would have been won by various, punters, and they've not claimed or validated their tickets or claimed the prize, so that it is treated as a liability until the person comes in with their winning ticket. They have it validated, and then the prize is redeemed, and that's when it's paid off to them.
But if the price is never redeemed, what happens then?
Okay, so after 6 months, the unclaimed prizes are sent to the to the Treasury. It's returned to the Treasury.
All right. What constitutes trade receivables at NLCB?
Trade receivables consists of the sales proceeds from the sale of tickets from the various agents, and this would be funds that have not been yet received by the NLCB.
Not yet received, meaning from your...
So it's due from the agents, but it's not yet received.
And it is due, what, 30 days after?
It's due 7 days after.
7 days after?
Yeah.
And what happens then?
Well, we book it as a receivable, and we pursue the debt with the agents.
And there are consequences?
And there are consequences. So the consequence is that the agent's terminal will be suppressed or deactivated, and so they can't sell any more tickets until the debt is paid. We have implemented more stringent measures in terms of collection of debt. So the agent has to pay off the entire debt in order to reactivate the terminal. They also will have to pay a security bond. There is interest on the debt if it's not paid, and that has been automated on the system.
That's a set interest, internal interest?
There's a set interest rate, yes, on the system.
But how long after these 7 days is the machine deactivated?
Immediately.
Immediately after 7 days?
A week after.
Okay, fine. I'm seeing a provision for impairment. I was trying to find it back, this specific note to the accounts. But what I recollect, I can't find it now, what I recollect is that there's like a deep discount in your provision for impairment. And impairment really has to do with you providing for debt. If it is, I'm just assuming, and you'll correct, of course, that your debt basically is liquid, well, cash. You know, the debt is money. It's not somebody who would have kind of purchased furniture or property, etc. Am I correct? It's more or less someone who would just have deposited money, right? Because it's a cash business. How then do you provide for impairment? And I found that it was really very... Right, thank you, Chairman. I found it was, when you looked at it, it was a very deep discount in terms of the impairment provision.
Yes, the impairment represents a bad debt, provision for bad debt.
Right.
That provision has been established from 1997 to 2013. So it's over a long period of time. We are still trying to collect on our debt, even though it's quite old.
So it's an old debt. It's not an ongoing thing that in every accounting period you make this provision for impairment?
In every accounting period, we analyze the account, established what is old, and that old period could possibly be after 60 days or 90 days, not being able to collect funds, and so we provide for the debt.
But is there any way you could mitigate against that, seeing that it's a cash business? that one of these, the owner of one of these operators, I mean, just not paying up when basically.
That's why we've implemented all of these measures now in order to, well, not now, but a credit policy was established in 2024, early 2024, and we've implemented some measures in there that would ensure that payments are made.
But under generally accepted accounting principles, assets are considered to be impaired when their fair value falls. Yeah, it's expected to fall. How does the value of cash fall in your business? How do you discount it? Why do you discount it?
So this is a receivable. We haven't discounted it. This is a receivable. And if we don't expect to collect it, then we provide for it, to ensure that the financial statements reflect an accurate position.
And that's after you've exhausted every possible route to collect it. That you book it as an impaired asset.
We continue to try to exhaust every avenue. But if it's after a certain period of time and there's a possibility that it may not be collected, we would provide for it. But we would still try to collect on it.
All right. And where are you now in 2022-23 with respect to your provision for impairment? What does the number
what was
look,
the provision
look
in
like?
2013? I can't recall.
In 2013, well, your beginning balance was, that's your balance for that year, over $14.7 million. Yeah, that was big, exactly.
So, and your question was, in what period?
Yeah, what does it look like now? Yes.
It's 47 million.
Wow.
So it's trending in the wrong direction. A lot of people not paying. Is there something you look at in terms of a profile? Well, I'm sure you have your requirements with respect to who you will contract with, but this is trending in the wrong direction. 47 million, where 10 years ago it has grown exponentially.
Well, the revenue is also growing exponentially. It's $2 billion, in excess of $2 billion per annum. There are a small number of agents who do not pay on time, who do not pay at all, who utilize the funds sometimes for their personal use. And because of that, we have implemented these measures to ensure that happens. So,
I saw also in the accounts a provision called the Agent Fund Reserve, and where the board charges and collects from online agents certain contributions which are intended to be used to provide relief. Oh, that sounds a little arbitrary to me. What does that mean?
So that existed in 2013. It doesn't exist anymore.
You all thought it was arbitrary too?
Well, I think agents were just, maybe persons were taking advantage of it.
Whom? It had to be the NLCB, because, you all were the bosses.
Well,
because
not
there's this agent reserve fund. I got the impression that they had no control over what this fund was and what was taken out.
So the fund represents a service charge a charge that we make to agents, right? So they have a terminal. There's no cost to the agent. So this is a charge for running the terminal, the maintenance of the terminal.
So and it's called.
And in 2015, it was $15 a week.
Okay, but it's called. What I'm saying is, this reserve fund. This was administered by the chairman, by the chairman's sole discretion. I got that impression.
No, not at
all.
Well,
no. Look in your accounts. It's not even a footnote. It's a
board.
provision in the accounts, and I read it where they said the chairman was the person in charge, and that is why my interest was piqued in terms of how does a chairman administer this.
It's certainly not under the chairman. This is under
maybe not under this current chairman, but I'm just saying it is in your accounts of 2013. Again, I just can't find it right. Yes, it's on page maybe 22 on page 18 of the accounts. Agent Fund Reserve. The payment of claims made by agent is subject to the sole discretion of the board, who shall determine the merit of each claim individually.
That's correct.
I found that was very curious. Why the board and not the management or what have you?
Well, the board has to approve any
approve
any payments.
But
Yeah.
it didn't say that. And then the excess of this income over any claims that is transferred to the agent fund. Well, all right, fine.
Sorry, this
good.
board mentioned here is actually NLCB, National Lotteries Control Board. This is not the board of directors. So it's
Okay. Oh, that's a
NLCB
company.
Correct.
Okay,
the
fine,
company.
okay. Well, all right, so but I think the language needs to be cleaned up then. Meaning because, to me, the board means the board of directors. So I could be blaming your poor chairman here for having a slush fund. You understand?
We don't have a board of directors, we have board members.
Pardon? Board members?
Board members.
Okay, I see. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
Chairman, thank you.
Okay.
Now, some of the agents' debts date back to 2019. Is there a period of time beyond which these sums will have to be written off as bad debts? And if so, what is the time threshold?
Actually, we have not written off any of the bad debt. We have not written off any of the bad debt. So the debt actually dates back to 1997.
Even worse than that.
Any write-off has to be approved by the Minister of Finance.
So the people who you would consider as, being bad debtors, are you still working with them? Are they still part of the...
Not all of them, no.
But some of them are?
All of the bad debt, all of those machines have been suppressed. So they're not able to sell. So they actually they're not working with the NLCB in that respect.
You've been without an audit manager since September 2023, eh? How has this affected the work of the internal audit function?
Can I ask HR to respond?
Good morning. So we have been without an HR manager since 2023. We have the SASE approved position of internal auditor 2, which works with the audit committee in getting the work done. We have tried to get persons to fill the position because audit is a very scarce position. It's very hard to attract and retain persons in this field at this point in time, and also the compensation that is offered. Sometimes, well, the last person who was here left because she was offered something elsewhere.
Have you advertised regionally, or is it just a local advertisement?
So we advertise on Caribbean Jobs, right? And it's open to all Caribbean nationals. No.
You mentioned one of the problems is the salary.
Yes.
But this is the organization that has been giving away a lot of money, to various people. I mean, you're quite generous in terms of what you've given to the members of the public. Don't you think you should be as generous with your employees to attract the best that you can, to perform the work that you have to do to the benefit of the society?
I agree. However, NLCB is a very unique organization that we're staffed with both public officers under the SASE and Service Commission, and the contracted officers, we are under the remit of the CPO and their terms and conditions. So while we would like to, we have a bit of a challenge to retain.
But other organizations, perhaps you really need to sit and find out what is really happening. Because other organizations have their auditors, yes? And you are having difficulty in retaining. You have the money, so something, maybe it's not just a salary, but you perhaps need to sit and think what is really happening in the organization. Because there are many qualified people out there. I'm sure, maybe listening to us now, they will put in their application.
I really hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah, because it's more than salary. Something is wrong. Can't put my finger on it yet. But maybe we can, you can advise yourselves as to what is really happening there.
Perhaps, if I may interject, perhaps one of the things you may want to consider is advertising on local media, etc. as well, as opposed to just advertising on Caribbean jobs. Maybe there may be an opportunity to look at other forms of advertising the vacancies that exist. Member, you want to continue?
You have a number of unclaimed prizes. What is happening with that?
Unclaimed prizes represent prizes that have not yet been claimed by winners of various tickets. We also make a provision for unclaimed prizes for the scratch games. So once we launch a new scratch game, we know what the prizes will be, and so we make a provision for it until the winner comes in, redeems the ticket, and so that provision is then reversed.
So that is ad infinitum. You can come in at any time, 5 years after with a ticket.
You have 6 months.
6 months.
6 months to redeem the ticket or the prize, and if you don't, then the money is remitted to the Treasury. You have to go to the Treasury to get approval to return to the NLCB for us to make that payment.
I see. Just lost out.
The Treasury. On the issue of the same issue of the unclaimed prizes, can you give us an idea on an annual basis, maybe, of the value of what these unclaimed prizes are? I'm curious, for example, to find out, and I'm sure members of the listening audience are curious to find out, if there has ever been an instance where the lotto winner, that prize was not ever collected. Because I have quite a few lotto tickets. I'm sure quite a few of my colleagues also have tickets at home that maybe be busy trying to find now.
We had a winner from Gazprom for 14 million and didn't collect his winnings.
But is there like an average?
About 6 months ago.
Is there like an average?
And she's going to give you the numbers now.
Okay.
To be living there, you could have passed through, and picked up the ticket.
So unclaimed prizes for the year 2013 is 150 million. I think you would see it in the financials and the balance sheet.
Yeah, that's 2013.
Yes. You want a figure for now, or
yes.
I don't?
in fact,
I don't have that offhand.
Last year,
it could be in that same region.
150 million. So we are looking at the potential that there's $150 million per year in unclaimed prizes. Well, some of it
I wouldn't say per year. Yeah.
Right, because for 2013, somebody may come in 2014 to claim in 2013, etc. But you accept that as a huge figure.
Well, it varies. In 2012, it was 42 million, and that's shown here on the balance sheet.
Okay.
So I can't. I could give you that figure.
Okay. So what happens then? Is there an advertisement that comes out from NLCB that says that there are X million dollars in unclaimed prizes?
No, not at all.
Why not?
No, we don't normally do that.
Okay, so but you have a 6-month period between which
you
must
you claim. Yeah.
Okay. Now that is outside of the scratch, etc., because this is the lotto.
No. These are all the games. These are all the games.
Okay, so all games have a 6-month life.
Yeah.
After which you must go to Treasury to make your claim if you find your ticket, etc.
Yeah, the scratch tickets, I believe, is 6 months. The online, the draw games, that's one year. Okay. And this is in the National Lotteries Act.
Right. So in that 1 year, the NLCB must now put aside allocations in anticipation of claim.
Yeah. Yes.
And that allocation that you have put aside can live on in perpetuity.
No.
Because if somebody does not, it goes to Treasury.
It goes to Treasury.
And Treasury then closes, because what you just described
after 3
is that
years, I believe, Treasury closes it. You can't claim. So this is in the National Lotteries Act. So
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
just confirm that.
Thank you. So I would want to advise all listeners, all viewers, to check your tickets. You may hold a substantial amount of funds, and I'm sure that the taxpayers would like to access some of those funds, especially in these very difficult times. Do you have any other concerns?
So, maybe we can have a law, may propose something that it goes into the health system or something. Something can happen. So
Well,
many
that's
people
not within
suffering
the
out there.
control- That's not within the control of the NLCB.
Sorry?
I said that's not within the control of the NLCB. Yeah.
I'm just thinking ahead, you know,
Okay.
because there's so many suffering people out there and that money lying down there. Just think roads and all of that. You know?
Member, you have any more questions? Okay, so let me treat with an issue that has troubled me a little bit. This is with regards to the record management policies. I'm having some challenges finding it in the documentation that I have in front of me. Oh no, I just did. So in your submissions to us, you advised that the project of centralization of the NLCB's record management function was not pursued in 2021. As at October 2024, no further action was taken on this project. So just for reminders, there was a project for the centralizing of NLCB's records. That project was ongoing at least up to 2021. But your comment to us now is that as of 2024 October, no further action was taken. Now I want to tie this in with what was mentioned by my colleague at the Auditor General's Department, where and I think in fact a representative from NLCB also indicated some issues with regards to accessing information, data storage, etc. My understanding is that this record management system that was supposed to have been implemented in 2021, when you were the board, would have treated with all of those things. Easier access to existing information, cross-referencing, etc., 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 and for auditing purposes as well. And it was, in fact, one of the recommendations from the committee, from when you presented to the committee in 2021. It was, in fact, one of the recommendations and expectations that because of the deficiencies in your management and your record keeping, that this project, that is the record management function, the centralization of that record management function, that project would have been important in treating with the deficiencies in record management that you would have identified when we last met. Can you advise whether that centralization of the records, whether that has now been pursued, totally shelved? If it has been totally shelved, why? And what cost would that have been to NLCB for a partial pursuit of a project? And what have you put in place to ensure that NLCB's accounts, the NLCB's records and documentations are somehow centralized in some place so that when the auditors come in, they have an easier time engaging? We have had instances before where I think the Auditor General's office, in fact, every single Auditor General's report highlights similar types of issues, and I'm sure would have highlighted similar types of issues and challenges with regards to getting access to records from every state agency. NLCB had the opportunity in 2021 to put a system in place to make this easier to address, and you chose not to. Can you advise why and what has been done since then to make accounts centralized and easily accessible to the Auditor General's Department?
Okay, so we actually would have checked our records. The project actually was not started. There were no, so in response to your question, Chair, about the cost to NLCB, there was no cost because there were no payments made for any such project. However, as, well, I would have actually taken up the responsibility now of looking at these records management and working on it. We have begun looking at the warehouses, the space. I actually put the disposal committee into place to make sure that we cleared out everything, look at the space that we have, the records that we have, and to start working on it. So that is actually a very important project. It actually ties in with the strategic plan. It is something that will tie in with all departments. So it is a very important project, and it is something that we have looked at starting.
Ma'am, can you advise whether or not, so you were looking at starting it, but have you made a proposal for funding or for support to the board so that the board could make a similar request?
A proposal for funding for a document management system?
Yes, ma'am.
No proposal has been sent to the board. In 2021, there was a preliminary, I don't know, what do you say? That record management system actually didn't really get off the ground. Somebody came in, did a site visit, and that was, nothing happened after that. And the director who was responsible, it was discontinued under the previous director. So it really never took place. No money was spent regarding this, and it, as Ms. Thompson said, that this is a project now that we want to look at as within the next few months.
All right. I'm a little bit concerned. I want to repeat the issue. You have some good ideas going forward. So there are commitments and proposals going forward, which is always good. Based on your strat plan, et cetera, you have a view and a vision going forward. But what I'm seeing now is a history of substantial issues which would have been raised in the committee sessions and discussions with us that 4 years afterwards we have not moved past the discussion stage. It is an issue of concern. Just to note that it's an issue of concern, and I don't want to have the situation arise where we come back, and because we can't do NLCB every year, that's the rule of the Auditor General's Department. We can't do NLCB every year, but the next time you come before us, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, and we wouldn't want to have to go back to the same issue, just like we are doing now, with the records management system having been viewed as important in 2021, discontinued, budgeted for and discontinued, and then you come in 2025, which is where we are now, and saying, well, in 2025, it's a project that we want to work on, because you would have said we wanted to work on it in 2021. So it is just again, it's an area of concern that we seem to be in the same place 5 years afterwards. Remember, you had a question?
Tell me about your new strategic plan. Sorry. It was approved by the Minister of Finance on August 15, 2023. Now, you said that some objectives of the plan were achieved, but due to manpower challenges, maybe sometimes the language you use, manpower, and time constraints, some aspects of the plan had to be postponed to the following period. Now, could you share with us some of the things that were achieved and some things yet to be achieved, please?
Sure. So some of the achievements for the period 22 to 24. So all of the new games that were included in the plan were launched, and I can list them: Win for Life, Playway Golden Draw, the $100 Scratch Game, Lotto Plus Multiplier, and the Cashpot Multiplier. We created a new organization structure. We defined a new organization structure, which was approved by the board, and we are now trying to recruit persons based on that structure. Accounting policies and procedures were completed. HR policies were also completed. We digitized the accounts receivable module. Job descriptions were updated. Sponsorship portal was completed, not yet launched, and a website was completed, not yet launched. We have certain things in progress. So we're looking at a non-cash payment option using a debit card for customers at the terminal. We are looking at constructing our flagship building, which hopefully will start very soon. We are in the process of trying to achieve World Lottery Association Tier 2 status. We are currently at Tier 1. We are about to develop a promotions portal and also an agent management system. World Lottery Association. You can explain it.
Explain World Lottery status.
Yeah,
WLA, World Lottery Association, is just basically the governing body that all lottery associations, or well, registered lottery associations fall under. So it's an umbrella. It's like basically like a network where you can access, you have the ability to look at what goes on in lotteries around the world, because as a lottery provider, you have access to data, reports, promotions, and other things, marketing that goes on in other lotteries worldwide. And there are many different like case studies, information, stuff that you can access from there. So it's just basically the governing body of lotteries.
Have you begun work on the development of your post-2025 strategic plan? Because we're in 2025 now.
we haven't started.
Sorry?
No, we haven't started.
When will you start?
I expect very soon. But I can't give you a
I never saw that date in my calendar, you know.
I don't have a date.
All right. We live in hope. We don't want to die in despair now.
If I may interject, my colleague raised an issue earlier with regards to the strat plan, and where you indicated that part of the problems, part of the challenges you had with the strat plan implementation was an absence, manpower challenges. I believe you were querying the manpower, but you indicated manpower challenges. There were other parts of the submissions in which similar language was used. If I may, initiatives to acquire the knowledge and understanding necessary to effectively implement the risk management policy have not yet been undertaken due to manpower challenges. The online sponsorship portal was not implemented in 2022 as planned due to staff turnover. So manpower challenges seem to be of concern to you, and it is of concern to us. You indicated, and my friend indicated previously in response to my colleague, that part of the problems may be that you have advertising and persons are not just putting their names forward. We know that persons, members of the audience are listening now who would definitely be very interested because unemployment rate is so high. My question is, what is the level of staffing requirement of NLCB? Are you in a comfortable place with regards to your staffing? I am aware that part of your response will be that you're understaffed. It must be because of the fact that you do have substantial number of vacancies. How have those vacancies, the existence of those vacancies and your inability to fill those vacancies affected the movement, the operations, the functioning of the NLCB? Because it's affected the implementation of the strat plan. So therefore, there must be a cost to that. It must definitely then affect your effectiveness as an organization. Are you understaffed? By what level are you understaffed? How has it affected you going forward as an organization? And what mechanisms have you put in place to address that understaffing?
I'd like to see if the HR manager could assist with that question.
Chairman, yes, we are understaffed, right? As I said, SASC, they send staff to us and sometimes it's not very timely. Also, as I said, to attract and retain, the exact level at this point in time I am unable to give you, but I can forward it to you after this meeting, right? And the mechanisms in place is because we have the day-to-day operational activities and the timelines in which we have to get things done, focus was placed on that. Because your strategic plan, yes, you need all of the staff involved, but the work of the organization had to continue given the number of draws and all of those things that we have.
Thank you for that very frank answer, ma'am. Would you say then that, because I'm trying to get an idea of a percentage, for example, to say that there's NLCB is understaffed by 10% based on your strat plan, based on your organizational structure, or some figure. Are you in a position to give a figure? Based on your organizational structure, you must know whether you have vacancies or don't have vacancies, because an LCB is not like a government ministry where you can hire temporary staff, etc. You are constrained by law, from what I understand what you're saying. But so your org structure must indicate the level of vacancies. It should also indicate the specific job titles, and in some of these things, like if you're missing an audit specialist or some other similar, those are very critical jobs. Are you in a position to indicate the percentage of understaffing, and if possible, the level in terms of the job positions?
Yes, I will forward that to you after this meeting because off the top of my head, I know we have some managerial positions that are vacant and some mid-level and supervisory, but the exact numbers I don't have at this point in time.
Are you of the view, I'm sorry to put you on a spot, and maybe Mr. Nancis might want to save you. Are you in a position to indicate whether or not this has adversely affected the operations of the NLCB?
I don't think so, Chairman, because we continue to grow. While we have a space issue, we are hoping that our new flagship building will make space available for the additional staff at this point in time.
All right. So, Mr. Nancis, what you just told the national population and SASS and CPU is that you are able to fully function with your short staffing as it is. I'm sure that is not what you wanted to tell them.
We have been functioning properly with the staff that we have at this point in time.
Then you need to reconsider what your org structure is. I'm trying to help you, but what you're saying is not what you want to say. Because if you are saying to us as a committee that you have no problem operating as you are now, you are telling us that your org structure, which is missing critical pieces, including management personnel, is able to function without that management personnel. So, say it differently. What you have now needs improvement drastically, because I also want to ask you, because I just told you that what you're saying is not matching what I know to be the reality. But I also want to ask the Ministry of Finance, I also want to ask you, what have you done, how have you engaged maybe the Ministry of Finance or the CPU or the SASS? What have you asked or done to mend? And maybe the problem is that you have not done any of that because you think you're working well with the short staff as you are.
May I just remind them of the ministerial response? Some objectives of I'm quoting from your document. Not the one that you have, the one that we got. Some objectives of the plan were achieved, but due to manpower challenges and time constraints, some aspects of the plan had to be postponed to the following period.
So basically what that says is that it has in fact affected the operation. Contrary to what you said, Mr. Chairman, it has in fact affected the operations. That's what the fact is. given that it has affected the operations, and Mr. Chairman, I don't want to say that you may not be aware, because that would be going in a different direction. But given that it has in fact it has in fact affected your ability to operate as effectively and efficiently as you should. This was from the Ministry of Finance's comments. Maybe you can indicate whether you have taken any action to engage the Ministry of Finance, to engage the Chief Personnel Officer, to engage the Statutory Authority Service Commission, to engage other agencies that you relate to. Maybe even as much as looking to change the legislation to allow you to contract employees as required. Have you taken any action at all to try to resolve those deficiencies that you currently have in your organizational structure? Which, as I said, as the Ministry of Finance has indicated, as my colleagues have indicated, has affected your ability to implement your strat plan.
The HR department has been working assiduously on trying to fill vacancies, and definitely we are aware that we don't get the kind of response that we should get. But we continue to work with who we have, try to manage the organization with who we have, and deliver the product that we have to deliver at this point in time. So I am aware of the constraint, but we still need to press on in making sure that the organization benefits, continue to run this operation in the best possible way.
Allow me, as a person involved in the labor industry as well, if you have 10 persons listed to work and you have 5 persons who are doing the 10 persons' jobs, it means you are stretching your resources, unacceptably so, and you are not able to compensate them for that kinds of actions. So what you have is a resource that is being stretched. So your staffing, and I'm now making a plug for your staffing. Your staffing is going to be asked to do more than they should be doing because of the failure of the failure of the board, the failure of the organization to fill those vacancies. Have you reached out to the Ministry of Finance to ask for even a change in the legislation to allow you space to hire to hire positions?
We did not.
You reached out to the Ministry of Finance?
Reach out to the Ministry of Finance.
Sir, can I ask why? Because clearly this is not this item, offshore staffing, is as far back as 2013 identified in documentation, and it was just as recent as 2024 submissions from both yourselves and the Ministry of Finance identified as a problem. Why have you not responded?
I ask HR, because they are responsible for that, who they reach out to and why we are in this position.
Sure.
Chair, so coming out of the strat plan, there was a new structure that was recommended, and we are working on submitting it to the Ministry of Finance for approval.
All right. I take that because it is what we have.
Yeah.
I want to position, my comment is that because we could spend a lot of time on this one issue. I think that there's need for greater collaboration at board level between the board, the Ministry of Finance, including the legal office, your legal personnel as well, to look at other options to fill vacancies. Otherwise, 5 years from now, we'll come back and review this, and we would have vacancies that have not been filled. This is not a 1 year thing. This is not today. This is not last year. Even in your 2013 documentation, those situations existed where you had manpower challenges. That manpower challenge will affect every stage of your activity, and ironically, the Ministry of Finance has recognized it in their submissions to us in terms of your ability to fully effect your strat plan. That means your vision going forward is being compromised, not your vision, but your ability to achieve your vision is being compromised because of staffing. So I think you need to place substantial emphasis as chairman and lead the fight together with the Ministry of Finance, to ensure that your org structure is fully staffed. It is not sufficient to say, well, we have to wait on CPO or on Statutory Authorities Service Commission. It is not sufficient to stay that, because you've waited for quite a while. From 2013 to now, it's, 12 years? We've waited for quite a while, and there are still vacancies. So I want to appeal to you, sir, on behalf of your staff, to try to engage the Ministry of Finance and the legal team, which may offer other options to fill some of these vacancies. Once you do that, sir, you will assist the Auditor General's department as well, because now you will know how much space you have for your staff to facilitate a space for his staff.
Just want to add, Mr.
Chair,
Nances, I think you've been too nice.
Chair, that is
so
where
we
it
need
comes
to change the approach.
Chair, that is where it comes in. We are hoping that at this point in time, we can get adequate space. But where we are, we cannot bring in any additional manpower, because it will be very, very tight, and we may have to rent additional space for them. So that is why we're working diligently to get the flagship building, so we'd have additional space so that the staff can operate effectively.
So while trying to help you, saying two different things. On the one hand, we are short-staffed because persons are not applying, etc. And on the other half, you are not bringing in persons because you are space constrained. Those are two separate, in fact, conflicting commentaries. I just want to register that. With regards to your flagship office, when my colleague spoke earlier, she raised an issue in 2013. Is this the same property that we were looking at in 2013? Was it Pembroke? Pembroke? Is this the same? I believe in your presentation, Ms. Thompson, you indicated that there was, or in somebody's response, you indicated that there was an arrangement at that time between the owners and yourselves to occupy. Are you in occupation of Pembroke?
No, we had a contract with a third party to lease the property, but that contract has been terminated because the plan is to start to construct the flagship building on the Pembroke Street property.
Now, I'm not too sure where, in terms of Port of Spain, where that is. Is that where the current NLCB's office is?
No,
that's not on
that's upper.
So have we been renting, has NLCB been paying a rent for a piece of property from
we own the
2013
property.
to now? Or NLCB is the owner of the property?
We own the property.
Oh, so you had a tenant?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Oh, that's phenomenal. So you are going to start, is there a time frame for when you're proposing to start this flagship building?
No necessary approval, and I think it should start in a couple of months, because it is a car park which was renting and bringing revenue to NLCB. So that is where we're going to put our new flagship office.
How is this building to be funded?
We are seeking financing from various financial institutions.
Are you, as NLCB, allowed to raise financing on its own, or do you have to go to the Ministry of Finance?
We've received approval from the minister to go ahead and raise financing.
On the basis of what collateral? Are you going to hold the land as collateral?
The building, yeah.
Okay. Colleague?
Remind the chairman that while the grass is growing, the horse starving. And I cannot understand his reluctance to rent a building. You need staff, but you don't have space for them. But you have money, because you're giving away money. I'm not telling you to abandon the laudable goal of charity and your donation, but really, some things need to be done, and they need to be done urgently. And the ball is in your court. So I hope you don't come back again before us with this state of affairs, that you need staff, you don't have places, and you have money. You don't go about saying we need the money like other people. So that you have a challenge, and I'm sure your staff would be much happier with you if you take the bull by the horns and start to do what you have to do. They will all band together with you. You know, talk to the Minister of Finance. He's not a beast. And I'm sure you all can work out something. Talk to the CPO. Let him know where it's at. So you have work to do. Don't come back before us with the story that you're still in the same position as you were in 2025. So we are now in the month of March. So let's see what happens. I've given you 6 months. What about that? Yes? And you nod your head. You agree with me. So things can happen and will happen, because that's very important that they do.
Chairman, I want to go back to the conflict of interest policy that took quite a while to get going, but seems to have now been put in place. In the opening statement, you, Ms. Barker mentioned your relationship with IGT. Can you indicate to us what is just for the benefit of the listening audience, because I have read quite a bit on it, what is the nature of the relationship with IGT, and what is the financial value of the relationship with IGT?
Presently, we have a very good working relationship because they are our service provider. Financially, I'd ask the finance lead to answer that.
IGT provides a service to the NLCB. They provide the platform on which the software and the hardware on which we run the games. They're also doing additional functions, I would say. They also distribute the tickets. They're involved in the distribution of some of the tickets. They do the marketing activities for the NLCB. And for that, they receive a commission on sales, which at this point it's 4.3% of our sales.
What's the dollar value of that? Well, you wouldn't be able to tell because this is a recent, 4.3% is a recent.
Yes, we recently renegotiated the contract and we've reduced the percentage commission.
Would you be able to tell us, so NLCB has been engaged with IGT since when? 1993? 1993. So just for the listening audience, IGT provides these services that you just described to NLCB, for which NLCB pays them, correct?
Correct.
Can you give us a dollar value of what you would have paid last year to IGT?
Service fees. In 2024, 134 million.
134 million in 2024.
Correct.
Paid to IGT for all the services that you just described. Would it be fair to say that that has been a fairly consistent figure, or is it? Well, it's based on the revenue.
It's based on revenue.
Right. So, I know you may not have it now, but can you provide to the committee at some point the overall value that you would have paid to IGT from 1993 to current? The reason I'm raising this is because marketing was one of the issues raised when you were last here. And one of the conditions, one of the recommendations we made, and one of the things that was agreed to by, in fact, by both sides, is a serious review, because you were paying IGT to do your marketing, but you also had a marketing department. That still exists. On your last trip to the Public Accounts Committee, you indicated a direction that you were going to look at the possibility of having your marketing department do the marketing of these games, do the promotions, etc., etc., etc. What has become the status of that? Because you just indicated that IGT is still doing the marketing. So you have IGT marketing, NLCB's games, etc., 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 for which you're paying them to do that. But you have a marketing unit. This is the same conversation that we had in 2021 when you were here last. And the indication then was that you were going to look at doing in-house marketing using your own facilities, because a lot of what IGT is doing in terms of marketing can easily be done by your own in-house marketing team.
So the NLCB marketing activities, they continue to be managed by IGT. However, the board has given we have strategic oversight in the NLCB by establishing committees to look at this. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we once again have the manpower issues.
You see, the challenge is we have a service provider on the one hand who's also doing the marketing. That's it may not be a clear conflict of interest, but these are two separate functions, which now you can't, in theory, and I'll get to that in a bit, you can't seem to separate them, because for the life of NLCB is based on your marketing and the service provider. You can't separate the two functions. Clearly, they should be separated, because now you have to hold on to the service provider, because if you don't, you lose marketing. And you're totally dependent on another entity to market NLCB's life. And that is a service provider. Now, I want to go back to the 4.3%. Based on what I was told by the minister, in fact, the NLCB. NLCB was paying fees to IGT ranging from 6 to 6.75% prior to your recent settlement of negotiations. Is that correct?
In 2020, we were paying 6.75. We had the first set of negotiations, and that was reduced to 5%.
Right.
And the second set of negotiations, that was reduced to 4.3%.
What is the industry standards for that figure?
Between 3.5% to 4%.
So previously we have been paying the service provider 6.75, 5%. Now we have done an excellent job of negotiating to 4.3%, and it's still higher than industry standards. That's the first issue. The first, I mean, it's heading in the right direction, but it's not in the right direction. It's not in the right point after how much ever years we have been engaging this company. That's the first issue. The second issue is that when you came before us on the last occasion, and when you would have come before Public Accounts Committee prior to this embodiment, we would have been looking at the IGT contract between yourselves and the government. You said you negotiated from 2020 to now to get from 5% to 4 point whatever percent. Why do we still have an ongoing contract with an entity which we should have had, let me say it differently. There was supposed to have been a request for proposals for this same service provision, to provide the same services that IGT has been providing. But for whatever reason, from 2021 when you were here last to today, that has not happened. As a matter of fact, what has happened is that the board has now, and you can correct me when I'm wrong, the board has now gone past the RFP stage and renewed the contract with IGT. Now, I am aware that there have been repeated renewals of this contract. I don't have the amount of times. Maybe you could tell me how many times we have renewed a contract with IGT without a tendering process, without a RFP going out. We have simply renewed a contract. That goes against every type of normal procurement practice. Tell me when I'm wrong, please. You could stop me at any point in time, because this is an issue of grave concern to me as a taxpaying citizen. Why we have not gone forward, especially since on the last occasion that you were here, provisions were being made for the employment of a consultant, etc. All of that is in the minutes of the meetings that we had from here. Provisions were being made for the employment of a consultant. I actually remember clearly ADESA and all provisions were made for the employment of a consultant for the purpose of developing the terms of reference of an RFP, to put it out in the public domain so that we can have a competitive process, so that the service provider that we are using as a country will be the best service provider at the best cost to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But that seems to have been shelved. Why is it that as we sit here today, we do not have an RFP for that service provision? When 4 years ago you said you were going to do it, and years before that you said you were going to do it as well.
Can I ask corporate to respond?
So, thank you, Chair. So in relation to the RFP that you mentioned, for the NLCB to engage in that process to go out for open tender to get a new lottery service provider, it has to do it in 2 stages, because the RFP for lottery service provider is a very technical and a highly specialized area. So the first stage, where, as you mentioned, the NLCB had to get expertise, which it doesn't have a resident in-house, to assist it. And that was the stage of getting a consultant to work with the NLCB to develop the RFP for the lottery service provider. And the NLCB did commence that process in January of 2023. The initial RFP was set out in January. It was cancelled, and then a fresh RFP was issued in March, the 15th of March, 2023, for that consultant RFP. That, as you are aware, the process commenced, and the new legislation for procurement came into being on the 26th of April. So the NLCB found itself in a transition period where it had to get legal advice. It sought the assistance of the OPR with respect to how it would transition with the RFP that it had embarked upon in 2023 March to get the consultant RFP completed. That caused certain delays, but it did go through the whole process to the evaluation with advice that it received from its external lawyers as well as the OPR. And the evaluation process for the consultant RFP was done and completed. However, in accordance with the existing legislation for procurement, the new public procurement legislation, the NLCB, there were certain challenges that were made to the process. Those were before the OPR, and in addition, we also had legal challenges. That is still before the court at this point in time, adjourned to the 28th of April. As a result of those challenges and legal proceedings that are still current, the NLCB was unable to move forward to award the contract and go forward with the RFP for the consultant. And that would have been the precursor for the development of the RFP for the second stage, which would have been for the lottery service provider. So the NLCB found itself in a position where it could not advance that process. As a result, the time for the contract with IGT, which was the 6th renewal, that was coming to an end as of the 10th of March, 2023. And the NLCB, in the interest of considering the continuity of the lottery, continuity of business, protecting the integrity of the lottery, it considered, excuse me, it considered that this is a procurement that it would have to undertake, and it looked at it from the perspective of there's a Regulation 12 in the legislation in terms of methodology of procurement, and it considered doing a sole select with IGT for the 5-year period, because it considered the time it would take for it to go through the entire RFP for the consultant as well as for the lottery service provider, and negotiated for a 5-year extension, which would have entailed the reduction in the fees as well.
There are several troubling things that emerge from what you just described. Let me try to remember them as they come up. We have had 6, what was it? 6, we have renewals. We've had 6 renewals of this entity since they were first awarded a contract. So the emergence of the procurement legislation and so on, that is a recent development. But we seem to be wedded to an entity. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. This may be the largest entity in the world. They may be best fit for purpose, etc. But we've never challenged it. The NLCB has never challenged whether this is in fact the best operator for us or not. At any point in time, at least since 1993 to today. So the emergence of the procurement regulations have been in play for 4 or 5 years thus far. The legislation became law that you are mandated to implement at a particular time. But for months before and for months afterwards, the Office of the Procurement Regulation has been involved in training and preparing, etc., organizations to ensure that they fulfill their mandate, that they are in fact able to meet the requirements of the procurement regulations. I'm assuming that NLCB would have also been one of the beneficiaries and would have also been proactive and would have also been engaging in training and preparing itself and its procedures to ensure that it meets the requirement. What you just described to me is that NLCB did not in fact do that, because NLCB went out with an RFP. Is that correct?
When we went with the RFP, Chairman, we started it prior to the advent of the public procurement legislation that was passed.
You went out for the RFP on January 15th, 2023, which was, correct?
Initially in January, but it was reissued in March.
I'm going. You initially went out for an RFP on January 15th, 2023, just about a year before the expiration of the existing contract with IGT, about 1 year. Normally for situations like this, the industry standards is substantially more. It's about 2 years, upwards of 2 years. So in the first instance, you initiated a process which was doomed to fail at go, because it would not have been completed without cutting corners and fast tracking, using fast tracking mechanisms which would have put other bidders at a disadvantage. You initiated a process which at the start you knew was, with was unable to meet the normal standards for this kind of process, so that you would have been able to open up the tendering process for a provider at January 15th, 2023. Even at January 15, 2023, we were all in Parliament. At that point in time, we knew procurement legislation was coming. Correct? March 10th, 2023, NLCB publishes a notice cancelling the January 15th RFP. March 15, 2023, a second notice was published with a deadline of less than a month for submissions. October 3rd, 2023, NLCB completes evaluation of proposals for consultant services to develop an RFP, evaluate and select a lottery operator. This is 5 months before the IGT contract. No talk yet about procurement. No talk yet about procurement regulations. No talk yet about the restrictions of the procurement. You, as far as you were concerned, you had put in place you finished the evaluation. You had not awarded a contract yet for the creation of the terms and reference that you would have had to use to engage any of these service providers. 5 months left on your deadline. Don't you think something is absolutely, and I'm not talking, even if procurement regulation did not come in, you had given yourself the miraculous time frame of 5 months to select, because you are not yet selected, to select, award a contract to an entity to design the terms of reference for the, and then the design terms of reference, it has to come to the board, it has to go to ministry, approve, etc., then put it out, then give a time frame for submission of proposals, etc., then evaluate, and so all within 5 months. Is that normal? Is that how NLCB operates? Is that how this type of industry, is that how it's supposed to operate? And I'm not talking about the restrictions of procurement regulations yet. Even without that, you were way out of possibility of being able to effectively, efficiently, and transparently award a contract on the basis of the RFPs that you would have put out. Then comes procurement regulations, which you should have considered in the first place. And the whole system is thrown out. Is it that the board or your good selves simply didn't have the manpower? I'm giving you the excuses now. Simply didn't have the manpower, didn't have the resources to put in place from 2021, at least when you were here last, from 2021 to now, you didn't have the resources, etc., to put in place proper procedures to ensure that you had an RFP done way before public procurement regulations came in place. And even after that, you didn't have the resources. Why is it that we are in a situation today where literally IGT could have come in and said, I'm not saying that this is what happened, could come in and say, listen, even if you had succeeded with your processes, you had 5 months, you still have to negotiate with me, because if I stop, NLCB shut down. You put yourselves at a risk, and I think that is unfortunate. I don't buy that it is because the processes were delayed and procurement and so on. Because for years before, you didn't do it. For years before. And then you could, this is something that could have been treated with the procurement regulator, so that we did not have to be in the situation we are in now. And the situation you are in now, and the country is in now, is that we are tied to a 5-year contract. I'll deal with the 5 years just now. We are tied with a 5-year contract with a supplier who is now our marketer. So we have this service provider and we have marketing, all tied behind our backs. We are strapped down to an entity. Now, I don't know IGT. I don't know, like I said, if they're the best or the worst or otherwise. But I would have liked the opportunity for the country, for us as taxpaying citizens, to get the opportunity to have a free RFP, to have a free process of evaluating, etc. Well, it wouldn't be free because somebody would pay for it, but for a process of evaluating, so that we know for sure that we are getting the best bang for buck, the best value for our money, and that is not what is happening now. So I do not accept, ma'am, with the greatest of respect, that you did not have enough time to put in place an RFP to get an RFP done. Because that's what this is. 2 stages you mentioned, this is not new. You would have done that when IGT was first hired. It's the same 2 stages. You hire a consultant, and then the consultant makes a proposal. The proposal goes through the regular processes, etc., and develops an RFP, and then that RFP goes out for the service providers to put in there. That existed. Now, technology would have changed. Technology would have changed to make things different. But it seems that NLCB has tied its own hands in terms of the transparency and accountability and so on that is required to put out an RFP so that we are sure that we have the best bang for our dollars. That's the first major concern I have with this whole transaction, and like I'm saying, I cast no aspersion on IGT at all. I think the weight of this blame lies on the fact that NLCB has not moved itself forward for far too long to ensure that we have the best bang for our dollar. We have the best value, and that brings me to an issue of transparency. That brings me to an issue of accountability. That seems to be NLCB is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise when you consider the lifetime that it has existed. Millions of taxpayers' dollars come to you and is spent, and I'm not convinced at all. This is just me speaking at this point. I'm hoping that you can find in your responses some clarification as to why we have not gone forward. Because telling me we are now going to go forward doesn't cut it. We just gave a 5-year extension. While I'm at that 5-year extension, on 6 times before, how many times before have we extended by 5 years? You are going to tell me, and I'm predicting, and I'm sorry to browbeat you. It seems that I'm browbeating you. I'm sorry because I really am incensed by what I'm hearing. You're going to say, well, the 5 years is what we value, what we estimate is what it's going to take to, tell me when I'm wrong, it's what it's going to take to go from RFP, where we are now, to the award of a contract. 5 years is what. So you have done all this wonderful work so that you know it's going to take 5 years. And then in January 15, 2023, you put out an RFP, giving yourself 1 year to go from RFP to develop an RFP. But now you know it's going to take 5 years to go from RFP to award. Something is desperately wrong there. Please help me.
Chairman, I note what you've said, and just wish to say, when the NLCB started with the RFP in 2023, prior to that, the NLCB was challenged by certain situations regarding its director then. There was a period when its then director, who would have appeared before the committee, took early retirement and had left. And the NLCB was without a director for a window. And we did not get someone until, I think it was in December of 2022. When that happened, immediately thereafter, we sought to put things in place for this RFP to be done. But there would have been some challenges in terms of the management at the time. It's the only explanation I could afford with respect to why NLCB would have started as late as it did. With respect to the period of 5 years, I just want to point out that the 7th renewal of 5 years did contemplate a transition period which was anticipated to run as much as 2 years. That's okay. Yes. The actual RFP period would have been not as long as the 5-year period, but it did include a 2-year transition in the event, regardless of whether it was the incumbent or a new provider, because you would have had to do a transition for the technology and platform and various things. So the actual RFP period is not 5 years, but less.
Ma'am, I think
But
you
I
just made my
acknowledge
point.
what you've said in terms of being, in 1 year, being able to do that was, overly ambitious.
I think, I'm glad you agree with me because this is an issue of concern. The other issue, before I turn over to my colleague who will raise some of the issues that have been placed to us from the members of the public, the other issue he raised is the issue of sole selective tendering. This seems to be a recurring decimal with the NLCB. On the last occasion you were here, I remember again challenging you all with regards to the employment of a consultant. That consultant, I forgot his name now, but the NLCB had hired a consultant. There was an individual, and then I think that there was a company, Adesso. Adesso at some point, so I will treat with that afterwards, in fact. It's just to put you on notice that I'm coming back to that. It's to put you on notice that I'm coming back to that. I want to hand over briefly to my colleague. There are some members of the public who are sending us some questions. Let's treat with some of them now, and then I'll come back with some of my other questions. Member John, and then you will hand over afterwards. Yeah?
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman. All right, from the questions from the public. Why hasn't the NLCB increased its payment of 8% agent commission, which has been in effect over the last 15 years? The comment attached to this question is, agents are asking for 15%.
Actually, this is the highest.
Second highest.
The second highest commission rate that is being paid to agents in the lottery industry.
Okay, so that's within the context of maybe some global benchmark.
Globally, correct.
Okay, but if that is, as far as they're concerned, it does not apply locally because maybe their costs are increasing exponentially. As a matter of fact, the other question is, given the increases in cost of living experienced nationwide, has any consideration been given to increasing agents' commission?
Not at this time.
Okay, and the last question I have is, why do agents have to purchase the night bags to deposit NLCB's revenues from games?
Agents are running a business. It's an agency. It's their business.
So you mean that's what the cost?
That is the cost of running a business.
All right. I suppose they're dissatisfied with that, and
cost of the night bag is $3.
No, well, maybe sometimes we don't have to sound so, to you it probably means nothing, but to an agent running on very tight margins, that probably is a material cost. Right, so I'm saying, I'm sure by now you know the profit and loss. You must be looking at some of that. Some of them are very small operators, and so we could also look at that and said, to you it means nothing. It's all part of the wash, but for them it maybe contribute to their materiality in terms of their accounts. So still look at it now, please. All right? Okay, thank you. Yes, Senator.
Okay. Other questions from the public? One, has consideration been given to sending agents weekly settlements via email on Sunday morning?
Agents' weekly settlement is on the terminal. They can access it at any time.
Okay. Why does NLCB continuously increase the penalties against agents? What justifications exist for late fees, weekly fees, and reactivation fees now being $1,000?
These fees relate only to defaulting agents. We have a small amount of agents that default on their debt for various reasons. So this is to protect NLCB and the money of the NLCB and the government as well.
Next question. When will NLCB begin timely checkup on malfunctioning machines because agents are complaining that the machines are giving wrong weekly settlement figures, forcing agents to pay the difference via their commissions?
We have heard that those types of complaints, but no one has provided information to us or evidence that the terminals are giving wrong information.
I see. Now, recently there was in the press some quarrel, you know, some of the agents were complaining about something with NLCB, and they were actually giving up the contracts and so on, and there's a lot of fury going on there with the agents. You know, they were very dissatisfied. Could you tell us something about what was the issue? It was quite recent, a couple of weeks ago.
I believe it had to do with agents who defaulted on their debt. So agents are owing us. There were a few of the agents, not the majority, owing us money. And NLCB has tried in several areas to try and collect this money. So we have 3 collection agencies. We have added 2 additional collection officers to try and collect money. We have exhausted our efforts, and so at the time that that article might have been published, we had taken legal action against those agents. It's actually about 40 agents that we are talking about.
My question, is it an inflexible rule that the announcement of the lotto draw must be at a particular time, regardless of what is happening on television at the moment? Because it arouses quite a lot of anger sometimes. You know that you're in the middle of a program and you cut in, not National Lottery, not Lotto, you know. Is it that it must be at that time, or it can be deferred until at the end of whatever is happening?
It's a live draw, and those are the times that have been designated for those draws. So we would want to ensure that it's live in order to protect the transparency for the games, the integrity of the games, so that the public knows this is not something that is happening behind their back or, you know, in some place. They are seeing it live. So it must happen at those times.
Oh, I'll take your answer, but of course it doesn't endear you to members of the public who are in the middle of something, you know. Be careful, especially in this climate.
I'm sure the punters are looking forward to it.
I missed it. Sorry, my fault. Would you repeat your response?
Sorry, I said I'm sure the punters are looking forward to it.
I think you're probably referring to Carnival when you look, or Panorama. For me, it was a Panorama. Panorama, yeah. No, I'm finished, yeah.
If I may just pick up on what you just indicated, there was a live, this is not in my notes, it's just something I recall. There was a live draw within the last year or so. I think it's within the last year, which got a lot of attention because there was an allegation that the number was announced prior to the draw being seen live on the television station. Social media made a lot of this, but I'm not aware. I'm sure that the NLCB would have commented, but I'm not aware of I can't recall what the comment would have been. It may be a bit unfair to you, but what I think happened is that the numbers were announced prior to being seen on the live draw. It may have been by a few seconds, but it created a ripple on social media about the integrity of the draws and whether the draws are real or not real. Are you aware of that? I'm hoping that you would be, because if you are not, I'm very sure I can find the social media posting, the social media post, which includes recording, because I'm really curious with regards to that. I'm sure that you're aware, as punters, and many persons would have been concerned that NLCB hides marks, etc., 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 and that's why the importance of the live draw, as you were just indicating, so that those issues could have been confronted with, etc. Trinidadians generally are conspiracy theorists. I myself have been accused of one of them, and where I'm going now, you may want to also imply that I am. But it is just with regards to that one instance when there was this one report. I don't know if you're aware of it, and if it had in fact been investigated, and what, if you can give me a 2-minute, just so what may have transpired in that one particular circumstance.
Yeah, Chairman, we have several pre-draws just to ensure that the machines are working properly and everything. And what would have happened is during the live draw, and before the live draw happens, those results from the pre-draw are supposed to be deleted, so that now you have a clean slate when the live draw starts. Unfortunately, that did not occur from the control room at the studio, and coincidentally, the results were the same as the balls that were drawn. So yes, that did occur. NLCB did launch an investigation. In fact, we had an auditing firm do a full, thorough investigation into the matter, and there were recommendations that came out of it, and most of those recommendations have been addressed.
That's a frightening situation, especially given that there was a coincidence that
it's a game of chance.
It is, but
So,
that it's a game of 1 in 36. I can't pick the same number every time, but the possibilities that it would be the same number is so huge.
It happened once in our 50-year history.
Things happen. Things happen. With regards to the equipment that was just raised, the equipment that's currently in use, that belongs to IGT, so because they are the service provider. How old is that equipment? The hardware, not necessarily software, because I think the software may have been improved over time. The hardware itself.
I can't say at this moment, but I know the part of the new contract that the equipment will be replaced.
Ma'am, that is new contract. I'm not worried about this new contract yet.
know.
I'm going to go back to that new contract just now. I told you what my concerns were with regards to the new contract. So existing now, we would have had terminals that are how old? That's the question.
I'll have to ask IGT that question. Pardon? Fidel, would you know? Mr. Odin?
I am not aware of that at this point in time. We would definitely have to refer to IGT to give us the exact date of the current equipment that we have.
Okay, who's responsible for repairing that equipment?
IGT does the maintenance on the equipment.
So IGT supplies the equipment, maintains the equipment, does the marketing. What does NLCB do?
Everything else.
But it seems that IGT does everything. We simply should give IGT a commission and just get a commission off of this thing. Sorry, IGT should probably take over the whole business and give us. All right, I'm being facetious for a reason. If we have IGT supplying the equipment and we have IGT responsible for maintaining the equipment, is there any way that you would know how many terminals exist? 1,200, 1,300, how many terminals exist?
Around 1,200.
How many repairmen? How many repairs?
We have those statistics that they provide to us.
Do you have it? Do you have it here?
I don't know. I don't have
because from the information I have, we are looking at 1,200 1,200 odd terminals with a small single-digit number of entities doing the repairs, of persons, 4 service technicians. That's the information I have. I'm subject to corrections, but that's when you have 1,200 terminals, 4 service technicians, and you have equipment that is antique and almost obsolete because they're still in use. That presents a challenge because as the equipment ages, there will be increased need for continuous upgrade and maintenance, etc. And the numbers do not seem to, it seems to create a bit of a challenge even for the operators themselves. As a punter myself, I'm aware of having gone to the machine and having to wait while they try to figure out what the problem was, and having to leave on more than one occasion to go to another place to engage just because that machine at that point in time was not functional. So you may want to review. Now you've already said that you've given this contract to IGT now includes additional equipment, etc. So you're going to now further tie your hands to IGT, etc. for after the 5 years, but we will treat with that when that 5 years period comes up. Hopefully by that time we'll have an RFP and new processes being rolled out. The 5-year period, somebody mentioned, was to include a period of what, 2 years or so for transition. So you've now cut down IGT's cut from 6 to 6.7 to 5 to whatever to 4.3 now. What would motivate IGT to now invest in new equipment without knowing in advance that 3 years from now they have the best chance of winning? What would, given that you've indicated that IGT, part of the contract is to get new, is it part of the contract, this new contract, or is it part of the RFP that new equipment be brought in?
It's part of the new contract.
So IGT, which now gets a cut in their take, is going to invest in new equipment that they did not invest in new equipment over the last umpteen years?
I can't say what the umpteen years are.
At least 10 years, ma'am. 12 years. 1993 to current.
No, well,
in fact, that's more than 10 years.
They would have changed the equipment during that period.
Okay.
So it's not that amount that you just indicated.
So IGT during a 3-year period will engage in changing out a substantial amount of the terminals that they are currently using.
Did they have agreed to the contract?
Ma'am, that means that your contract negotiation skills is exceptionally well. Can I ask though, who is the entity that advised this contract negotiation with IGT now? The new contract that IGT has with NLCB, who is the entity that guided that negotiation? Did NLCB management or a team from NLCB, employees, negotiate with an international player like IGT?
Yeah, we did have a team that negotiated with IGT.
And because we are negotiating what is in effect the exact requirements minus 1 or 2 that should have been in the RFP, the final RFP that would have gone out. Because that's basically what you're negotiating. You're no longer negotiating to get somebody to come in to develop an RFP. You are negotiating a contract with an entity that would be resembling what you would have gotten as if the RFP down the road. No? You are negotiating for the provision of terms, conditions, services, maintenance, etc., etc., etc. Correct? Somebody would have had, or some entity, some organization, and I know the answer, I'm trying to get it from you. Some entity would have been telling you all, this is what we need to ask for, which would reflect what should have been an RFP. because you as an organization cannot be going in blindly to negotiate with IGT, which does this for a living. For decades across the world, it's an international company. I don't think that NLCB is so naive to think that they are a strong enough contender. I believe that you had technical advice.
Our focus in terms of negotiation was the commission, the rate of commission, and bringing it, reducing the commission rate. The contract remained more or less the same as the previous contract, 3-year contract. IGT proposed certain things and we accepted in terms of including additional machines within the contract.
Are you saying you received no technical advice from any entity?
No, this was the management and the
What
board.
is the role of Adesso in this entire process?
Adesso was not involved in this negotiation at all.
Is Adesso still employed by IGT? By NLCB?
No, they're not.
For what period of time was that entity employed, and for what purposes?
They helped us in the first negotiation in 2020.
And again, they were selected by sole select tender at that point in time.
Yes.
We now have a conflict of interest policy that will ensure that I believe that issues that would have been raised with regards to the employment of sole select, etc., would, I hope, now not recur. It's unfortunate that that conflict of interest policy was in fact implemented or is being implemented subsequent to the negotiation, because in that negotiation there's space for question marks. The other issues I think I can raise via letters, communications, etc., because it really is for clarification, and that will require a bit of a technical responses. I just have a couple more questions from members of the public, which I would want to present to you all. Based on the high levels of crime, most agents have had to install security features to protect themselves as well as NLCB's assets. Has NLCB considered offering assistance to agents to mitigate their security issues?
No, that has not been raised before.
I'm aware that there is, in fact, an agents group of some sort, maybe more than one. Has this issue not been raised at all with NLCB? Has the agents, as individuals or as a group, not raised concerns? Well, the security issue is one factor, but I think, unless I missed what was asked, whether there was a consideration for raising the benefit to the agent, so that that question was raised, whether there was consideration for raising the agent's take to ensure that they are now able to meet some of these requirements, which would not have existed when the first arrangement was initially made, where the agent's commission was established. So the question is, have these agents reached out to you as an entity, as but you are essentially, they are working for you? Have they reached out to you with regards to asking for additional funding for either specifically for increased security requirements or for an increased commission so that they can meet these new needs that are coming up?
They did reach out in terms of an increase in the commission. But what we just indicated is that they have actually receiving the second highest commission worldwide in terms of the lottery industry. So it's currently not under consideration by the NLCB.
It's not under consideration because it's viewed as the second highest in the world? Shouldn't it be based on the practicality of the situation, the need, the
Best
numbers?
practice, I suppose it's best practice, which is...
Remember to the level of our currency. When you're comparing with the wide world out there, just remember the value of our dollar as opposed to the agents in, the Miami Lottery, Florida, and so on. So have a little heart for the agents, you know, and it might help you to consider even a slight increase.
All right, in the interest of time, I just have two more questions which we must ask because these are from the members of the public. When agents deposit via night bags, they receive no proof of deposit. Doesn't this raise serious concerns surrounding financial transparency and leave agents open to any or all allegations of misappropriation of funds? I asked that because you indicated that some agents were not paying, and therefore you had instituted some consequences for those things. But what has been raised here is the risks of, because there's no over-the-counter, there's only no requirement to do night bag deposits. There's a risk of a delay or a lag at the bank level that may affect the agent's reporting structure to you, and therefore agents may be penalized, not for their fault, but because of the operations of the bank. Is there any consideration, so I want to help the question, is there any consideration for looking at facilitating the over-the-counter transactions, which will make it, I think, faster and clearer and safer for the agent to deposit the earnings in, because they will immediately get a receipt saying this is how much money was deposited that they could transfer to you, and that you are clear that there's no delay on their part that may cost them misinterpretation that they have not met their obligations to.
Well, this is we would like the agents to deposit over the counter, but this is not within our control. The banks have stopped that. They are no longer accepting funds over the counter, and they have put in place the night bags. So that is actually.
Ma'am, given that these are employees of yours, I mean the agents are in fact your employees. The agents, sure, but they are working for you. If the agents do not function, if the agents collapse, if the agents shut down, NLCB does not generate a revenue stream. And neither does IGT as a result of that as well. So therefore, it is in everybody's interest, I think, to try to get an engagement. Have you considered that all together, if you think it is worthwhile? I think you just indicated that you would like over-the-counter as well. Have you considered at all engaging both yourselves, your good selves, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of National Security, because there's a security issue as well, and the agents to approach the banks for consideration? Maybe just like my friend here would like to get a room in your new building, that there may be consideration for assignment of a teller or assignment of a space and a time when we can have these over-the-counter transactions, so that the agents and NLCB are facilitated and the bank is not put out. I think the bank doesn't want to do it because it means an agent has to stand at a counter and a teller has to be assigned to count a substantial amount of money at any point in time. But maybe you would want to consider twinning with both the Ministry of Finance, the agents as well, to approach the banks for some level of engagement and consideration. And maybe if the banks are listening, one brilliant bank will take all the business away by simply offering over-the-counter services. Yep. Last question. Has NLCB given consideration to have staff work remotely as a possible ease solution to the space constraints, which may in turn solve NLCB's inability to bring on new staff? Has there been any consideration for work at home or alternating hours, etc.?
Ms. Joseph would like to take that question. Joseph would like to take that question.
Hi, Chair. So, Ministry of Public Administration is currently working on the remote work policy. So we are waiting for that, so we can roll it out into the NLC.
Hopefully we get that and your new building, which will compensate for all of these things, so we get some progress. Ma'am, you have a question?
No, you said that the percentage that the agent receives is 8%?
Is
it 8?
8% for the online games and 10% for the scratch games.
All right. And you said the highest in the world is 15%? No? You said
we are the second
give
highest.
Second. Hmm?
We are the second highest.
Sorry? We are the second highest?
Yeah.
What's the first? Didn't you say 15 and be a second with
No,
it?
no, I never said 15. I can get that information to you.
All right.
I can't
Can
recall at the time.
you, can you find it in your heart to raise it to 10%? To propose that?
That
So
would
it'd be-
require financial analysis.
Sorry?
I-
No. I mean, before you reach into all that, just think positive that you want to go there. And you will, you know, if you have something in mind, you will find ways of getting there, you know. So today, before we let you all go for lunch, think so they could have a better lunch, that you could consider how you could reach the 10%. Can you do that? Even if for me? Because I'm pleading with you for them. Yes? I see your chairman is smiling, yes?
All right, I think we'll put you on the spot, but it is.
Let me consider it, yes?
At least I think it is an issue of concern, and I don't think we should simply dismiss issues of concerns that have been raised, because they affect the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization that you belong to as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more questions on this side. As a concluding statement, we have raised several issues of concerns here today, not the least of which is the documentation I am hopeful that you will send to us as well. But several issues of concern have been raised today. I am hoping that you take it in the stead in which it was raised. Our objective is to assist NLCB to ensure that NLCB functions to its maximum level of efficiency and effectiveness. That is what this whole conversation has been. On behalf of the National Lotteries Control Board, on behalf of the Public Accounts Committee and the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to thank you all very much, the members of the NLCB, the members of the Ministry of Finance, who I think we gave an easy pass today, and the Auditor General, who I think we also gave an easy pass today. I want to thank you all for coming in. I also want to use this opportunity to thank members of the listening and viewing audience. And as you could tell, we had quite a substantial amount of questions coming across the board, so that means that we had substantial interest. I want to thank you all very, very much for coming today. I wish you all go home safely. Thank you all to the members of the viewing audience and listening audience as well. And now we will end the in-camera session, and our sitting now is going to be suspended. So thank you all very, very much. Yes? Thank you all again very much.
Thank you.
So just a couple more minutes so that we could all right, usually we go and shake hands and things.
Yeah.
You want to do that?
We have to do it? Oh, yeah. Yes. This is the last time I suspect.